Hi, I'm Happy Chichester, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Happy Chichester.
Yeah, of the Afghan Whigs.
Royal Crescent Mob.
Howlin Maggie.
He was original member of the Twilight Singers.
Yep. So, and his solo endeavors. He's promoting his Bandcamp page and a lot of his solo singles on his Bandcamp page.
He had 2 solo albums and a few singles in the last couple years.
Yeah, so hey, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Happy, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Happy, we're happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, in between of, the after effects of the tornado here and getting my house worked on for the last week and a half, and it's still not ready yet, but we're finally glad to reschedule it, and we have to, finally have you on tonight, so we're excited.
Yeah, great. I hope I hope everything's gone okay with that. I know that you had been dealing with some contractors and that the tornado did some real damage, and I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it's all better.
Well,
at this point,
let's just say we're getting there. It's not done yet, but we're getting there. So hey, let's get into the music, man. This is why we're having you on tonight. So, you presently have released an abundance of solo material on Bandcamp. Can you talk a little bit more about your experiences using Bandcamp as a platform for your music?
Yeah, I like the platform because it offers artists a real fair deal, and it's that way of getting your music directly to fans via the internet, and it's just democratization. It enables all sorts of people from all walks of life to get their music up there and distributed, which is amazing, really. It's just amazing because getting your music distributed all around the world, think about how huge that is. It's just,
yes.
It's humongous and empowering, and it lets artists do their thing.
Do you feel as though right now where music is at, where songs and I should say tracks are being uploaded to so many different sites by the thousands a day, do you find that Bandcamp can be a little bit convoluted?
Well, I have to say, my experience with Bandcamp is much more from the artist side and not so much from the consumer side.
Sure.
But I've discovered artists. It's mostly through word of mouth. Like always, there's certain like music blogs and sites that I like to check out, and It's really nice when they've got a link straight to Bandcamp and you can listen for free before you decide to buy it.
Sure.
And I love that. Really, I do.
Oh, fair enough. I know that we had Dweezil Zappa on about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he would just start up his own, I guess, what was it was called rewardmusic.com.
Yeah.
It was like a meta search for artists to put
like
everything
subscription
up.
based.
Yeah, subscription based, and they could even sell merch on there, and also download artist music, whatever. I don't know if you ever heard of something like that before.
Yeah, I have, and almost got involved with something like that. And I do like the subscription model because that's a real direct relationship between the fans and the artist, and I think that's pretty cool myself too. I haven't ventured into that yet, but have considered it. Yeah, for sure.
Very good.
That's cool that Dweezil's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So you released the single "Have You Noticed" in September of 2021. Through Bandcamp. Can you talk a little bit more about the writing and recording process of that track? The lead guitar work is fantastic, especially toward the end of that song. Talk a little bit more about it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, man. I had gone through a couple different phases with that song. I had a different chorus, and suddenly the pandemic hit, and I had this time that I could really get into it, and just... You know how you get projects stacked up and you're like, well, I'll get to that sometime. Well, that provided an opportunity for me, and I was able to finish that. I had watched 2 documentaries and watched them because I consume music documentaries like a fiend. And one was about Sam Cooke, and the other was about the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
And I just somehow the combination of inspiration and motivation hit me so strongly that I went in the next night and I finished the song writing at the studio. And then when, one of the things I like to do is just play the drums and hit the drums for like an hour. And I did that a lot early in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, I got the thing written and I had the time, and I put her down, and it was nice to put the song out when it came because it sat around for a while. I've got a lot of unreleased material that's just sort of sitting around, and I had an offer, a very generous offer from someone I met in college named Dave Rogalski.
Mm-hmm.
Rygalski. Dave Rogalski. And he and I met at Ohio University in Athens. And we haven't seen each other since then either. So it's been a long time. And he got in touch with me, and I was just delighted to hear from him. And he said, if you ever want, I do like very basic, simple, like text videos. And he has experience in TV. He was a writer for David Letterman. He was a writer. I believe he's a writer on The Simpsons, and has a lot of. OU has a renowned school of broadcasting, and that's where he got his education. But it was a very nice, generous offer for him to do a video. And I said, well, I've got a song here then. And he sent me back this video, and we went through a little round, and I'm just, I was just so blown away that Dave would do that for me. And then there was an opportunity at the time. I thought, let's put this out now because we have this video. And like I said, there's a lot of material I've stockpiled that's completely finished, with the idea of putting it all together in an album form. Sure. That has, I want to make an album, not just a loose collection of songs. I want it to have a kind of, a thematic sort of continuity and integrity. So I've just stockpiled stuff, waiting to compile it all to an album. And that was one where I felt like, thanks to Bandcamp, and the idea of distributing things worldwide just through the internet, that opportunity was there, and we put it out, and there you got it. And thanks for complimenting my lead guitar playing, because I've been working on it.
It's fantastic, man. I loved it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, I'm always fascinated by because I can't do two things at the same time. It just doesn't work for me. But the guys that can get out there and vocals and guitar and keyboards and drums, and you can pretty much do it all, and you do a lot of the tracks yourself. Can you just talk a little bit about that process and what it takes to put a song together?
Oh, sure. That mix got me excited too, because Barrett Jones mixed it, and he's got a lot of experience. And I remember when I got the first mix back from him, because we'll do, it's remote. We send tracks. He's in Seattle and I'm in Columbus, and so it can just send the files to him, and then he'll send me a mix, and I'll bounce it back until we hit upon the just right mix, after some refinements or tweaking. And the first one I got from him had the drums just sounding so huge. It got me really excited, because nobody had ever really made my drums sound that gigantic and powerful. And so, I love drums. Are my first real instrument in terms of, actually studying.
Nice.
Although I'm totally home, I'm a self-taught musician for the most part, but I did start learning drums in elementary school, and drums playing the drums personally has a lot of meaning and importance in my life. So just playing regularly, and that song in particular started out with just me on acoustic guitar and a microphone, and just singing the song live in the studio, and you get that basic track, and then you just start overdubbing the other instruments, and it happens fairly quickly, and not as quickly as others can do it, because I'm also engineering myself, and sometimes, like with the drums, I'll take an entire night just to get the sounds and the miking just right, and the signal to the recorder balanced and just right, and then I'll come in the next night and do the performance side, because it's like two different sides of the brain, the engineering side and the performing side. And well, I'm just glad you brought that song up. Thank you. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, with the video that Rogalski did, and the mix that Barrett Jones did, and the response that it got. So thank you guys for bringing that up.
Absolutely. Well, pandemic-wise, we've spoke to many artists that found a creative renaissance for themselves during the pandemic, and other artists felt like it was just business as usual. For you, did you find the downtime during the pandemic sparked some new creativity for you?
It was very productive time, yeah, because for the first time since I was a teenager, I wasn't playing gigs, and I had time to finish songs that I had started, to begin and finish other songs, and just spend time a lot of music and songwriting is not just about nose to the grindstone, but also just playing. Like the drumming routine that I've nurtured over the years, it just opens doors creatively, and to have plenty of time to just do that, to just play, and you're not, there's no deadline or other constrictions. To just go and play and see what comes back in terms of that creative door opening and ideas showing themselves into the room with you. It's really that was it wasn't a terrible thing, really. I have to say I took advantage of it and enjoyed that aspect of it.
Very good. Well, I wanted to cover your cover of Elton John and Bernie Taupin's song Razorface. Killer job on that song. What is it like taking on that daunting task of covering an Elton John track and making it your own? You know what I mean? How did it work for you?
Well, it really was a labor of love. I had been going to a friend's house, his apartment, his name is Jim Biotti, one of the greatest artists Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio period has ever produced. One of the smartest people I've ever met. One of the most kind-hearted and interesting people I've ever met. And in late 2014, he was diagnosed with cancer. And he was just kind of foregoing treatment because he didn't have insurance. And he was relying on a small group of friends to just show up day to day and care for him and do things like wash dishes and do the laundry and fold the laundry and bring him meals. And because I loved his art and I loved him so much, I got involved in that with a few other friends. And then he passed away early May of 2015. And we had been listening to music a lot together during those days I would spend with him. And one of the albums we listened to a lot was Elton John. That album that has Leave On, and it has Razor Face, and it has Tiny Dancer. And I just thought that was the song for him. The words, they all fit. And I actually had told him that I was going to record it for him. And then when he passed away, I just did it in like one night and just try to do my best, because Elton John is, I got to say, was the spark for me when I started playing piano, learning to play piano, and then writing songs. So listening to Elton John with Jim Biotti, and it brought me back to where my real start as a songwriter was as a kid. And I wanted to pay tribute to Biotti as an artist and celebrate his life in whatever way I could. And that was the way that I chose.
You did a beautiful job on that song.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, you've been in a few notable bands that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but you've been concentrating on your solo career here lately. But what can you compare and contrast a little bit about being a player in a band versus being the solo artist, and how's it work for you?
I've really enjoyed both things, and I think I would feel like I was missing out if I didn't have both of those experiences. Being the leader of a band and being the guy in the band with a leader, they're very different. And just being an artist, a solo artist, is different altogether too. I'm so glad to have the experience of being both. There's an interview, I think it's like on a Lennon bus they did. Shawn Smith turned me on to it. And it's they're interviewing Bootsy and they're interviewing the bass player from Earth, Wind and Fire, and they're very different experiences. Bootsy wasn't really prepared to be the band leader because he had been in James Brown's band, and then suddenly after playing with George Clinton, he became the leader of the band, and that was really hard for him. And I had that experience too because I had been the bass player in a band called Royal Crescent Mob, and band was just all, that was we had a guy, our singer David Ellison, was really strong on the taking care of the business side, and I was more of just like in the band kind of guy. So I related to that because in Earth, Wind and Fire, in this interview that I'm referring to with Bootsy, Earth, Wind and Fire is a tight ship, and everybody had to be on the bus at a certain time and everything. So I mean, I'm thinking of Al McKay, but I don't know why I'm blanking. And I'm embarrassed to be blanking on one of the greatest bass players of all time, his name, but it's in the evening and I'm not altogether there with my memory right now. No, it's just playing in playing in a band and being the leader of a band are great experiences, but being a solo artist was always part of what I've done. Even when I was a leader of the band or in somebody else's band, I'm always writing songs and recording songs solo. It's just who I am, and I love doing both because they teach you complementary things. And when I say that, I mean things you need for taking on all of those different roles. You know, if you've been a band leader or a solo artist, you can go into somebody else's musical construct, be in a band or a solo album or something, and help even more because you understand where they're at and what they need a little more. With a little more, you've got a little more insight in what they're needing. And I'm talking too much about this, but anyway. The interview in the Lennon bus, and I forgot the name of Verdine White. It was one of the greatest bass players of all time.
Yes.
And Fire. Verdine White, I'm sorry because I just idolize you, man. I actually got to wear Al McKay's pink salmon pink suit on a tour one time with Royal Crescent Mob.
Oh, cool.
We were opening for the B-52s, and anyway, Verdine White. So sorry, I couldn't. My brain just kind of choked.
It's story of my life, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how do you view yourself? Do you view yourself as the solo artist that joined a band, or do you view yourself as a band member that became a solo artist?
Solo artist that joined bands. Yeah,
fair enough.
For sure. Because I started writing and recording when I was a kid, and before I was, out of high school, I had gone into a studio and done like this 7-minute opus, playing all the instruments, and that was totally apart from the band that I was playing drums in. They never went into a studio. The first time I went into a studio was solo, for sure.
All right. Well,
yeah, and that 7-minute opus, by the way, I mean, to my ears now, it's unlistenable. But you get experience, and you develop skills and knowledge, and it all helps when you join that band later and they go into the studio for the first time. You've already been there.
Oh, very good. Well, let's talk about your very first solo album, Lovers Come Back. It was released back in 2007. Okay, and so Shadows Remember the Day is my favorite track.
Both put a star by it.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I love that song. Okay, so here it is. This is my take on that track. It's a haunting yet epic track. Can you give our listeners a little bit more of an insight on the creation of that song, because it really stands out on that album?
Yeah, it's one of those moments where, thanks to drumming and the routine that I had cultivated, which, just real quick, I want to just backtrack a second because it's not actually my first solo album. There's one before that called Live at the Aladdin Theater in Portland, Oregon, and that was the first one we put out, but Lovers Come Back is the first studio, the one of my recordings from the studio as a solo album. And I had this routine where I would hit the drums for like an hour or more every night. And the process would sort of cleanse me. It would open up my mind and open that creative door. And when I was done playing one night, I just had that melody. And just feel like there's some external force that's delivering music to my ears and my mind.
Yeah.
And that's what drumming would do for me and still does for me. It really opens that creative door where I'm wide open and listening. Music's out there for people to just grab, I love this, there's this documentary about the Pogues, and he talks about, there's all this music out there, and you've got to grab it. Like, I was like, I've got to grab it before Billy Joel grabs it or something. Which I love Shane McGowan talking about it. Then he'd laugh like, and that's my imitation of Shane McGowan cracking up, But I love that quote because I agree. It's like music is always out there, and I have an artist friend named Foley who played with Miles Davis, and he said, some of us have longer pin codes. It takes us a long time to log on to get to that place. He's played with people like Prince and Miles Davis. He said those guys have pin codes that are just like 3 digits. They're like, and they're on, and they can access that creative world that's available to all of us. But we just have to, coax it and romance it a little bit and draw it to us. And drumming did that a lot for me. And Shadows Remember the Day was one of those experiences where I had finished drumming and I had, like, the music was just in my head. So I went about at that point just, sketching out the basics of it.
Oh,
But I'm glad you like it, though. I really like that one too because it's kind of psychedelic,
Yes,
and,
that's what I say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives that, I don't know, it just gives me that, like, hippie gothic feel thing going on to it. Am I totally off by saying that?
No, not at all. No, I'm with it. Hippie gothic. That sounds good. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's the only way I could explain it in my thought process. But Jeff's going to give you the next question.
Sure. Well, your next full length, Torchwood Loop. Can you compare and contrast the two albums?
I enlisted a lot more help from friends around here. I just have to say Columbus, Ohio is a wonderful place to be if you're a singer and songwriter and producer and you love having access to friends and community that's very supportive, because on Lovers Come Back, I was able to access a lot of talent in our neighborhood, and so grateful for all of that. By the time I got to Torchwood Loop, I had been touring a lot with, like on my own and touring like in Europe and Canada and US, and just hunkered down and did, I had maybe one or two outside, tracks coming in there, but I just hunkered down because I felt like I was really on a mission, and I would go every day and work on it and get it done. And I just love Prince. All my, I guess as soon as I heard Prince, I just loved him, and I always thought that, that's like what I was doing in high school, like playing all the instruments. I always loved artists who could do that. I always loved bands too, because of the, personality theory, the way that personalities interact and create this unique sound amongst different personalities. But I couldn't deny that I had this music in my head and I wanted to hear it. I wanted to actualize it so that I could share it with others and not just live with it in my head all the time. And that was the mindset I went into Torchwood Loop with. Torchwood Loop is named after the street that my family moved to in Columbus when I was 9 years old.
Awesome.
And I was really bummed about being in Ohio because we had lived in the mountains in Maryland where it was really beautiful, and I missed my friends, and Columbus was flat and cold, and within months there was the opportunity in school to start playing drums, and I didn't like school all that much, but the opportunity of being able to hit the drum in fifth grade was just irresistible. And so Columbus and that opportunity started immediately building, and so I started playing drums, and then I started teaching myself guitar and piano and writing songs and really making. My mom says that I was always writing songs, but I don't really remember taking it seriously, like writing down lyrics and trying to record until around that time. So that album is named for that place where I got my music really going, and that was Torchwood Loop. I got my first set of drums, and there was always the piano that my mom had there, and I would start playing the piano, and my sisters would run me off the piano, so I'd retreat to my room with the guitar, and it was always a challenge to be able to practice and work and write. But I was just a kid, but I was just so genuinely consumed with music and possessed with the spirit of songwriting that there was no way anybody was going to stop me. And so Torchwood Loop became an archetype in my dreams. You know, my whole life, if I was dreaming about, and the setting in my dream was Torchwood Loop, I could tell in my dream interpretation that I was dreaming about my music. You know, just like if I was dreaming about a van, I was dreaming about the band. You know, I've cultivated dream interpretation my whole life too, just to understand a little more coherently what my dreams and my music and my wishes and hopes and stuff are all about. You know, try to get a larger and more poetic sense of what all that stuff means. So that's the whole journey of songwriting. And Torchwood Loop, you know, I put the same kind of, I credited myself the same way that Prince would credit himself on something like 1999, you know, because it's produced and performed and written by me, and I'm very, very proud of that. You know,
awesome.
Since then I've, you know, gone back to playing with another drummer who's way, way better than me, and you know, being able to cultivate that personality theory of interaction and ensemble playing. But I'm just so glad I, you know, gave myself that space and enabling myself to just get that music out of my head and onto a CD that I could share with people.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
So in this part of your career, playing live, how do you approach touring? Is it do you get in the van the old-fashioned way and tour the United States, or are you one of those festival acts or flyouts, the weekend warrior stuff? How does it work right now for you?
Oh, right now, not a lot of touring, honestly. There's so much going on personally that limits that, and the pandemic really was an abrupt halt to so much of that for so many people, and have had to like find ways to compensate for, you know, just sort of like change how you continue to make music and make money and connect with the audience. So, you know, things are different. For me, if I'm going to play a show, it's going to be a small thing, house concerts, mostly on the weekends. I'm doing music for a film, composing for a film. I work with a group in Columbus called Harmony Project. I'm playing in Ohio prisons every week, jamming with this phenomenal band that is Harmony Project, and it's got a lot of community service aspect that music for me is just so it's so huge, and I'll take it however I can get it, because honestly, playing in prisons has been a hugely rewarding and eye-opening, inspiring experience. Playing with Harmony Project, or working on a film, or doing house concerts as opposed to club dates. It's expanded my experience with music and with other people in music. The thing that hit me about the pandemic was that it's this global respiratory illness happening that's killing millions of people, and so scary. At the time, in early 2020, the prison, one of the prisons that we're playing in April of 2020, they had the second worst COVID outbreak of any place in the entire United States. And not far from here, also in Marion Correctional, it was the worst COVID outbreak, and people were dying. And it was a respiratory illness. The thing about live performance and singing, with people there and sweating and live shows, is we're breathing each other's breath, and that itself is the essence of inspiration.
Yes.
And yet that experience became completely dangerous to our lives.
Yeah.
We had to stop doing that for a little while. And, but that doesn't mean that you can't find inspiration still.
Right.
And we were doing, I did a house concert for the guys in the Pickaway Correctional, who, every one of those guys had gotten sick, and I had to do 4 concerts to reach the whole group in one night because they had to break them up into smaller cohorts due to health and safety protocols. I did around the same time the Columbus Association for the Performing Arts also asked me to do a video concert so that they could share, because people were stuck at home. People still wanted to go out and see live music, and Columbus is a great place because the audiences here are very, very supportive and nurturing of live music. So Kappa got me to record a concert for them, and that was again like a modified way of getting that inspiration that you get in live music performance. And so yeah, I've had to modify and to be sort of creative and adjusting to the new realities. It taught me a lot and given me new skills, and just keep going. So you just keep going. That's what artists do. That's what lots of people do, but artists are particularly good at it.
Absolutely.
Jeff? Yeah. Well, you kind of alluded to Shawn Smith earlier, and that would behoove me not to ask. I'm a huge Shawn Smith fan. Discovered him back when Brad first came out. One of my
Me
favorite.
too. I love Shawn.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
With you.
One of my favorite solo artists, and I love promoting guys like him and you. And but you've worked with him before, and I think he asked you to go out on support of Brad in like 2002, about the time you were getting going on your solo work. Can you talk a little bit about that tour? Is there you got a story, or how did your relationship work with Shawn?
We had met through the Afghan Whigs and worked together with the Twilight Singers.
Yeah.
And in 2001, Howlin Maggie did a release party for the last, it turned out to be the last Howlin Maggie album. It's called Hide. And we invited Shawn to open that show here in Columbus. We did a show with, like a big venue, the Newport, which is like a 1,200 seat venue. So Shawn brought his 12-string, and he did most of the show on 12-string, honestly, which is amazing, which is an eye opener for me because I'd seen him, on piano a lot.
Yeah.
And we liked each other a lot, but we started to become real good friends during the Twilight Singers time, and we would have him he would come and do shows here, or we would work here, and we just became really good friends. And we talked a lot about our label situations, because Satchel was with Epic, and Howlin Maggie was with Columbia. So they're basically two different imprints of the Sony group, and we were experiencing a lot of the same things. And so when I broke up Howlin Maggie, and that was in the late summer of 2002, and decided I'm going solo, and we've been talking to each other a lot about this, and he was like, that's amazing, because that's really what he idealized as well. I think he was a solo artist who played in bands, because he was too good not to, in every front. And so I was in the studio one night working, and that guy Foley I mentioned earlier, who talked about Miles Davis and Prince having the short pin codes and being able to access that place of musical creativity, inspiration. Foley had come up and just laid down a bass track on a song from that came out later on Lovers Come Back, called You're Blowing My Mind. And that was the same night that Foley did that bass take in one take, which is just, if you listen to that song, Foley is just mind-blowing how amazing he is on bass. And you'll hear it on that track. But then I got a call after he left that Shawn wanted me to come and open that entire month-long Brad tour, which just was like an incredible way for me to begin my solo career, to get out on the road for a month opening for Brad. And, I was believing trying new material out, in the process. So, instead of like stockpiling it and putting it out and then finally performing it live, I like to get it out there and try it out, because the audience reaction is a great indicator of what's weak and what's strong. And I was, appreciated having the audience's input on that in a way, just letting me know, intuitively and sometimes very clearly what's working, what's not. And so that same day that Foley came up and recorded that bass track, I got the message from Shawn that he wanted me to open that tour. And we roomed together the whole tour, and we got even closer. And that was amazing, because then he started working on Shield of Thorns and said, come out to Seattle and work on that with us. And I worked on the Diamond Hand with him. And we just, we did a tour in 2014. And there's even stuff that he would send me, he would send me tracks and say, can you do this or do something on this? And we just continued working. We just loved each other. And, I miss him like crazy. I'm just like such a fan of Shawn's, and I loved him so much, and he loved me, and we were like two peas in a pod. We had so much in common too, with like growing up with paper routes, our, moms taking us to the Episcopal Church, having Rogers drum kits, and, dads who couldn't stand hearing us play drums at home. We just had so much in common. And anyway, enough about that. I just I went long-winded on your answer there, but that's the good basic gist of it right there. He called me one night and said, hey, come on tour with us, and you can ride on the bus with us. And it was amazing. It was one of the greatest tours I ever went on.
What just fascinates me about him is Shawn is that his diversity. My favorite project with him was All Hail the Crown with Kevin Wood. He could be in the heaviest, but then he could be in like an R&B act. He amazed me, the diversity of what he could do as a musician. Yeah, me too. Well, that's one of his crowning jewels in terms of his ears. He had an ear for a lot of different things. And like, think about rock and roll. I mean, it's really a wide range of sounds to me, but not everybody agrees with me. It's very subjective when you ask people, what is rock and roll? But Shawn was one of those guys. He and I saw it very similarly. It's this wide range, so much bigger than we would ever be able to explore thoroughly. But you mentioned Kevin Wood. When we put out Lovers Come Back, we invited from the North to come to Columbus and open our 3 release party shows, and that's how I got to meet Kevin Wood. I had met another their brothers, the Wood brothers, out in Seattle, hanging out with Shawn. And Shawn was a rocker, and he was a soulful. Like he could sing. He could sing such a wide range of things, and one of the greatest artists and people I've ever known in my life. Just missed him every single day. We miss him as well. I guess it wouldn't behoove us if we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be Greg Dooley of the Afghan Whigs. You were part of 2 Afghan Whig albums? Is that correct? Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience working with Greg and the Afghan Whigs? And we were just sad to see that you were only with them for 2 albums.
Also with the Twilight Singers. So it's kind of like 3.
Mm-hmm.
But we knew each other, from Royal Crescent Mob days. He's just down the road in Cincinnati, and I'm up here in Columbus. And I know that. I remember seeing them in this little venue called Apollo's. And we hit it off. We always hit it off, because you meet people when you're out there playing, and there's chemistry between people, and me and Greg totally hit it off, and we enjoyed hanging out together. And when it was toward the end of my time in Royal Crescent Mob, which had been about 10 years, and I got a call from Greg just saying, "Hey, we're going to be recording this album in Memphis, and if you've got the time, would you come down for a couple of days and record?" And I of course said yes, because I really enjoyed that album, Congregation. Me and Shawn also agreed on that one. The Congregation was for both of us our favorite Afghan Whigs record. And I know that sounds weird because I played on two of them that aren't my favorite, but I still like those albums. But we both really liked Congregation, and so when Greg, when he asked me, I said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." And that was a fun experience because they worked really fast, and that was Shawn's thing too, just like get it down and work fast. And so I wasn't there that long for the second one, which is the name escapes me right now, but anyway, Black Love. Yeah, Black Love. I was there for a little longer because we were recording that out in Seattle, and we stayed for that. And there's a lot of outtakes and stuff from that we recorded as well that go beyond the album. And it was a real good experience. The band is, one of the Ohio great bands, and I'm just psyched to have had a chance to, keep playing Ohio music. Paul Buccagnani, well, I love drummers. Steve Earle is just like, to me, is one of the greatest rock drummers. And then he left the band after Gentleman, and then they brought in a guy named Paul Buccagnani from Memphis. And Buccagnani gave me this drum lesson that derives from Art Blakey, and I still will talk about this. So, Paul, if you're out there listening, thank you for that drum lesson, because I've used those rudimentary things that you taught me to this very day. And, it was just, it was fun. Working with the Whigs was great.
Oh, we loved it. We absolutely love both those albums.
I know, and then Twilight Singers, boy, that just combined my love of Shawn Smith and the Afghan Whigs, and it was awesome as well.
Yeah, it was like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted to move over to Royal Crescent Mob. It was your first band signed to a major label. Royal Crescent Mob had 6 studio albums. Can you talk a little bit about the rise of the band and your departure from the band?
Yeah, Greg Dooley from the Whigs told me that we were the model for their ascent, because he said he watched us. We were recording our first album at a place called the Recording Workshop, which is a recording school here in Ohio, where students learn audio engineering, and they had this deal. It's been a boon forever for artists in Ohio to go there and be able to record for free in a studio setting. The caveat is, if you want to, you have to buy the tape, or you're dealing with students who are not experienced; they're just learning. But we hooked up with one of the instructors named Jonathan Weiner to record our first full length, which is called Omerta. We had already recorded an EP called Land of Sugar that had gotten a lot of critical raves, and the Village Voice in New York named it the EP of the year.
Awesome.
So we had this momentum, and we were going down to Chillicothe and recording every week. But like I said, David Ellison, Mr. B, the guitar player, Carlton Smith, Monty Temple. Those are the guys I have to mention from that band, because I love those guys. And we did a reunion about 5 months ago that was just beautiful, and just really loved those guys. When we were starting out and recording that full length Omerta, we were going to the workshop and recording, but then on the weekends we were doing. Every other weekend we would do Columbus, and then the next weekend we'd do Cincinnati. And over the course of 8 or 9 months, really developing the material live, and we go into the studio and get it, and get it right, because we'd gotten real tight playing live. And Dooley said he watched us go from like playing this University of Cincinnati little room, and then going to the Plaza, and then where one night the guys from the Bears, including Adrian Ballou, showed up to watch us.
Oh, cool.
Then going to Sudsy Malone's, and then going across the street to Bogart's, which is the big venue. And he said he witnessed that, and the guys in the band just said, that's what we want to do. We just sort of marched up. As soon as that band started taking off, I mean, it just caught fire. It'd been smoldering and then caught fire because we were just working so hard, all the time. And I love that band, and it's one of the greatest experiences of my life.
That was such a cool band. Well, you do have some news for us as far as new solo material is coming out, or you're working on new solo material for a new album. What do you got for us? Oh,
yeah. I really want to finish at least one more song for it. I've got plenty, and I could, like I was talking about earlier, I could just put out material that was reasonable length of an album, but I've been recently inspired with 3 more song ideas that I really want to finish. But I do have plans of putting out a full-length album, and I'm really interested in putting it out on vinyl.
Nice.
Even though I know that it's like the world of music is more about streaming nowadays and all that stuff, but there's this place in Columbus called Musical, and they are a music studio that was built in the 60s, and then in the basement they still press vinyl, and that's where the first Royal Crescent Mob album record was produced, was pressed,
Mm-hmm.
And then I did this single that came out in 2016. One of them is a collaboration with Shawn Smith. It's called Knocking at the Door, and it's a 12-inch vinyl single, which is something they did in the 80s that people don't. I mean, when people see a 12-inch single and it's like 2 songs, it confuses people now. But a 12-inch vinyl single in an earlier time was one of the highest fidelity ways of listening to music. So there would be these extended mixes and a lot of club mixes and things. Well, we put that out in 2016, and it was pressed at Musical, where the first Royal Crescent Mob. So I love the studio. I love the guy who built it, and I love vinyl, and want to put that out whenever it's ready. So just hang in there a little longer. It'll be ready once I get this last bit of material finished.
You're making us antsy, man.
I know, very cool. Can't wait.
Well, some of that stuff's going to be already released. That's been on Bandcamp, but there's at least 5 or 6 songs now that nobody's ever heard except for a couple friends of mine. An example would be on the Bandcamp page. There's a song called "Stranger Life," and I talked about you talked about Razor Boy and Jim, and I talked about Jim Biotti, and the reason I recorded Razor Boy, I wrote the song "Stranger Life" for Jim Biotti during that time that he was dying, and we were spending a lot of time. I was helping with his hospice care at home, and I wrote that song specifically with him in mind because he had such a that's the guy who touched my heart, inspired me, because he was just such a brilliant artist. And that song you can hear that on the Bandcamp page. And I'm not doing, I'm trying to get my drummer Nathan Parker to come and replace some of my drum tracks, because he's just such a brilliant artist. Even though I'm oftentimes happy with my drum tracks, I like Nathan's drumming so much better a lot of times. And you can hear him and me playing together on that song "Stranger Life." It's just the two of us, and but that's one of those songs that I want to include it on the new album because of the source of inspiration and the thing that I was talking about earlier of what would make an album have integrity and kind of a continuity that leaves a listener feeling like they've had an experience that's larger than just like a single, like hearing a single. I love singles too. You hear a song that you fall in love with, and that's a magical experience that I can't wait to happen again. It happens all the time. But there's something about albums in the era that I grew up in that have that, that kind of thematic continuity.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I respect Bandcamp for what it is, but for dorks like Jeff and I here, we got to have the physical product in our hand. You know what I mean?
Yay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, because I still got I've got all the vinyl that, survived all the cullings that happened when I was trying to make Rent in the early days of Royal Crescent Mob and stuff. But I've still got a very large vinyl collection, and I love listening to records. I mean, for one reason, you can, it's sort of divided into side A and side B, and they can be distinct experiences in and of themselves. Right. When Howlin Maggie recorded Honeysuckle Strange in the 90s, record companies had stopped putting out vinyl altogether. But we got I got a lawyer to get a provision in the contract that they would put Honeysuckle Strange out on vinyl as well. And so, I sequenced the songs of that album into side 1 and side 2, and I just enjoy that, being able to listen to side 1 and or side 2. I like that. So, those are all reasons why I enjoy vinyl, and I'm so glad that you guys, agree that there's something about having that physical thing.
Yes.
I've never used Spotify, and it's not that I'm not curious to know about, what's out there or anything. Part of it is just people I hate to use this word, but consume music in different ways, and it's just not the way I do it.
Right.
I'm sure people have pointed out the beauty of it, that there are these algorithms that if you like this, you're probably going to like this, and you can discover new music that you never heard before. So I'm not dissing it at all from that way. It's just I haven't gotten to it yet, I guess. I'm still busy listening to music in different ways and the way I experience it. And it's not just recorded music either, but live music. Or like I said, jamming in the prison every week. Music is just it's everywhere. And I'm so glad that it's pervasive like that everybody has a chance to hear it and create it and support it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm going to put you guys both on the hot seat right now. Jeff doesn't know this is coming, but I'm going to put you guys. We'll start with you, then Jeff, then me. So, Happy, what have you been listening to lately? Or what have you been spinning? Gotcha.
Well, on the vinyl, there's that To Pimp a Butterfly album by Kendrick Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
I could listen to that's a 2-album set, and the drum programming, and it's just so inventive. It's just like bristling with invention, things that a lot of times it's like drum programming. It's so at odds with me because I get so much out of the act of drumming. It's a spiritual and meditative thing for me. So a lot of times when I hear sequence drums, there's sort of a template that they come from, like you get. It's like on a Casio when you get the bossa nova beat or the slow rock, it's just like templated. But on that album in particular, it's just exploding with ideas and invention. And so that's one that I've listened to more recently. There's a lot of I've happened to walk into record stores when somebody has just come in and sold a collection, so
exactly.
I've got this Blue Note stuff, like listening to Wes Montgomery playing guitar with Jimmy Smith on the organ. It could be really, I just, if I'm in the mood for something someday, I never know what's going to pop into my head, I signed into my YouTube channel yesterday for the first time in probably, 4 years or something, and it showed me what I'd looked for, and I was so surprised. I was like, oh, wow. I was listening to the Bangles.
Yeah.
Or Jerry Rafford. I was surprised that it, showed me what I'd been listening to, because I'm all over the place. That's one thing that me and Shawn appreciated. We could be all over the place. And I used to be kind of a snob when I was a teenager about music, because you're so afraid that but back then it seemed like you'd be identified as something. Like when I was in high school, like my friends and I, my friend Nen had turned me on to David Bowie, and I loved it right from the start. Diamond Dogs and The Man Who Sold the World. He got me into it by playing me the Running Gun Blues, and I was just like totally down with it, or like the chant of the ever circling Skeletal Family. But back then, people thought you liked a certain kind of music that you'd be, kind of, you can be teased about it. But I put on like, well, it would be one of those things where I'd be afraid to admit that I really liked ABBA or Olivia Newton-John.
Exactly.
But now I'm way less concerned about that. I'm so glad that there's all this music that, that there's so much of it that I know that I'll never even get to. That's just amazing. Even just in Columbus or just in Ohio. I mean, Ohio produced, like Devo, produced Nine Inch Nails, produced the Ohio Players and Roger Troutman, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So you hot seated me, and I'm just letting you know that's all good. It's all good.
All right, let's pass the mic over to Jeff here. Jeff, what have you been spinning, man?
Well, I discovered a band recently. It's called Crownlands. It's I think a duo. I think it's only two guys, but they have kind of like a modern vibe sound of Rush. It's
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I was telling you about that. They have their newest album's called Fearless, and it's pretty badass. And
wow.
And then I had to get out my Honeysuckle Strange today because I bought that when it came out. And for people that have not listened to Howlin Maggie, that is a rocking album. Get out there and listen to it.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Thanks, man. Tell me the name of that first one that you mentioned.
It's called Crownlands, 2 words, and they're from Canada. And I believe it's just 2 guys. One guy on drums and another guy on
bass guitar
or bass guitar, and very very Rush sounding, but not a copy. It's all original music, and it's pretty badass.
I like this. So I see that's how I get music. It's like nerds like me. We talk about music and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go check that out. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I've been spinning Ultravox a lot lately, spinning the Uvox album. And always been a big Ultravox fan because they were so eclectic. And this album for me is really special because they kind of crossed over into the mainstream, but yet still holding their artistic integrity. And so with that, I spin a lot of Ultravox. I love Midge. I just think he's a brilliant lead singer. So yeah, that's what I've been spinning. Fair enough.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I've got the recommends that I'm going to go in search of.
I don't know. Are you an Ultravox fan?
Well, I'm going to discover that. I don't know yet.
Okay. So
honestly,
check out the Uvox. It's U, the letter U, and VOX album. It's all pink. Fantastic album. Absolutely love that album. So, all right. On to the last question for the night.
Thank you.
We're going to put you on the real big hot seat. I asked this question to all of our guests. The mystery of rock and roll. It's no longer dawning of the internet, social media. There's no more mystery of rock and roll. There's no Kiss or Led Zeppelin anymore. For you, the artist and the fan, what do you prefer more? This new dawning of accessibility? Because if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be doing this with you right now. Or do you miss the mystique of rock and roll?
Well, I'm sorry to have to dispute the premise of the question.
Oh,
because
here we go.
Music is always mystical and fascinating to me. And even if I know, I roomed with Shawn Smith on the road, and it's still, I was, in the room when he was writing Wrapped in My Memory, and it's still mystical to me. I could know somebody or not know them, and it doesn't matter. I got to meet John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, who I idolize, and we just got down to nerd talk, because and it didn't change anything about how I listen to In the Light. I'm still so spellbound when I hear that song. It didn't even matter, and that's how music is for me, and maybe that's why it's been such a lifelong fascination, because it's always. I love seeing just like the normal everyday guy that you would think like might be an insurance salesman or something, and then he sits behind the drum kit and your mind is blown, and that's always going to have. There was a guy like that here who passed away this year named Matt Wagner, and you never know that he was such a virtuoso and played with the OSU Jazz Ensemble. And I used to go watch him play drums and just would be mind blown. And so I'm more of like, I gotta say, the democratization, the modern age is fine. I love that bygone era where you create huge superstars out of music. But Sly Stone is one of my favorite songwriters of all time, and he'll never ever really get fully credited for being the genius and the towering giant of 20th century music. But I'm going to quote him right now: "Everybody is a star."
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. All right, so we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, you really have done an amazing job of bringing out some song titles and putting them in your listeners' ears, and I really, truly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, I got to tell you, so when we design our guest list, we send the invitations out, and I always try to keep in mind of, Jeff is a huge fan of a lot of the bands that we talked about tonight, and I knew he's a big fan of yours, and I said I just have to get Happy on this podcast, and thank you so much for agreeing to do it. It's been a spectacular interview tonight.
Really, it's my honor, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, I really appreciate it. Absolutely. So
I appreciate what you're doing. I went through looking at all the interviews that you've done, and I just feel very honored to be in such amazing company with, and also that you guys are doing this. You're documenting the history of rock and roll, and that's important. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I guess the thing is that it's kind of funny that we're talking about this right now. I was talking to Steve Ferris of Mr. Mister a couple days ago, and a lot of our potential guests are kind of put off with, hey, you guys are not really genre specific. We want to stay genre specific, and with that being said, we lose some artists that way. But Steve Ferris was talking to me the other day, and he was like, hey man, I don't care. I love everything. I'm not scared off by anything at all. So it's so refreshing when we have artists like yourself that like everything, and they want to be a part of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's too limiting. I'm too curious about all the other things. So I'm glad to hear that too. I really am. Thank you.
Well, very good. Well, before actually, this is how things are going to work out. We're about 3 weeks behind on our episodes, but when Jeff, the editing wizard over here, gets everything all cleaned up, we'll send you the link, and please share it wherever you can.
Yeah, we want to really thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys. Really appreciate it so much.
It was fantastic, and you were the only interview for the evening, and so we got to spend as much time with you as we possibly could tonight.
Awesome.
Man. It was great.
Excellent.
All right,
enjoy
man.
the rest of the night. Thank you.
You too. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.